Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Billboard Comics. I am Bill, and I will be taking you down another path of our recurring feature here on our little network here that I like to call the Girlfriend's Guide to Comic Books. It's not girlfriend exclusive; it could be for anybody, any significant other, male, female, or anywhere in between, um, who loves somebody who loves comic books and wants to get either a better understanding of what's going on with the comic books, or a little bit about their history, or how if they're going to go out buy stuff informed, how to go out as an informed consumer, so they're not taken by anybody, either on purpose or accidentally. Um, this time around, we're going to focus on the world of trade paperbacks and comic book collections, mainly trade paperbacks, um, uh, archives, which are one of my favorite books, and I'm going to cover Masterworks on that too, and omnibuses. Um, so basically, like in a too long didn't watch kind of area, trade paperbacks are basically collections of comic book storylines, usually done in a thick, like trade paperback format. Um, you know that it's named after the actual publishing format, which is usually a thicker on better paper, um, kind of sold in bookstores. Um, this is the trade paperback is a relatively recent um, kind of like invention. You might think of it as that way anyway, anyhow, but it actually got its start back in the 70s. Marvel came out with a bunch of collections called through Fireside Books, the Son of Origins, Origins of Marvel Comics, Bring On the Bad Guys. It's a collection of like theme stuff about either obviously origins of Marvel Comics or origin stories from some of the characters, and Bring On the Bad Guys for stories about the villains and so on and so forth. These were kind of like the first forays into collecting comic book stories into a trade paperback format. Um, of course, like the same format was used for other creators, like Will Eisner started a whole bunch of like nonfiction fiction, like kind of like a semi autobiographical graphic novels, like A Contract with God. Um, the ElfQuest books were collected in a uh, trade paperback, was more of a square kind of format. Um, so creators and writers and companies dabbled in this here and there until about the mid 1980s. This is when the first trade paperback I actually remember getting actually hit the stores. Actually, the one I got didn't hit the stores. I got through a mail-in outfit, I think through Nabisco or someplace like this. It was Man of Steel, collecting the John Byrne Man of Steel reboot series from about 1986 to 1987. This is a relatively new prospect at the time, um, but it basically collected the whole series in one fell swoop, and you could read it all in one sitting. Um, and then DC kind of went on and did more other stuff like Death in the Family and all kinds of other storylines with that. And then, of course, Marvel took over, and now it's become an industry-wide practice. Every comic company um, typically puts out trade paperbacks of their storylines immediately after the storyline ends, or the miniseries ends, or the extended series ends. Um, if I was going to give you a list of all the trade paperbacks that ever made, um, I don't think there's enough bandwidth on the YouTube servers to cover all that. Um, it's so acceptable that it's like so common practice that it's done without even thinking about it. What does this have to do with the collector, you might say? Well, your collector might be the kind of person who just like prefers to get their comic books in trade paperback, get the whole storyline at once. That's especially pertinent in modern times, like from the 2000s onward, where the um, term "wait for trade" came about because the writing style of the comic book issues, instead of being more concerned with giving uh, like a full story in each individual issues linked together to one bigger arcing story, they kind of spread the story over the 6 issues. So it's kind of a slow burn to get where you need to be, and it's better to read it all instead of like one monthly fashion, waiting a month between installments to get it all at once. Some people might exclusively collect trades. Some people might be the kind of collector who they don't want to mess up their original comic books, so they get the trade paperback versions of it, um, just to like have something around to read. Some might actually have like you know um, a wanting to collect every title, every version, every installment, every version, every format of every title that they have. Like if they are a really big fan of Watchmen, they want to get every single printing of Watchmen out, every like the every trade paperback and every other ones, like say like the Omnibuses and stuff like that. Um, so you have to know what type of collector your loved one is. Uh, are they kind of is she the kind of person who likes to collect the um, trade paperbacks and doesn't like the actual individual issues? They like both, or they like everything. Um, that's good to know. Uh, let me go on now to another form of collecting, comic book collections, which were popular, at least for DC back in the 80s and 90s, and they kind of died off. But Marvel is still keeping up and running. Which is the archive or masterwork format. Um, this is one of my favorite formats around. I have almost uh, a complete set of the DC archives. Basically, where they came out like a certain amount of volumes, like usually they're classic Golden Age um, titles, and would come out with a book to collect like a certain amount of issues, like maybe 10 or 12 issues, all in one, all remastered, all cleaned up and brushed up, and making sure they're nice and neat. And these DC archives were hardcover uh, collections of these classic stories. Um, so they would oftentimes have to click the whole story one after another. It would go on for volumes. I know that I think the Justice League DC Archive line ran 10 volumes. They had a line devoted to the All American Comics, which went right up to 57, which was the last appearance of the um, Justice Society of America in the original run. Went all the way to um, the went through eight installments, and so on and so forth. Um, Around a little bit after DC started their program, um, actually a couple of years before actually DC Archive started their program, Marvel came out with the Marvel Masterworks program. This was a similar kind of collection of their classic stories in a hardcover, uh, better printed aspect. It But the only difference is between the two. The DC Archive line died out a couple years ago, but the Marvel Masterworks is still going strong. Um, while the top line uh, like volumes of DC Archives might end at like 10 or 11 or 12, um, Marvel Masterworks have 23 or 24 volumes, um, and a little hard to collect that way, because if you want to get all of them, every single masterwork ever made, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. These were usually released at about $50 a piece um, on the when they first came out, um, and they vary in price now in the secondary market. Some of the DC archives are more prevalent; they were more printed heavily or in more greater numbers. You get for like maybe $15 online. Some ones that weren't quite as popular, that didn't really sell us, didn't have as much orders. Uh, you could pay like 60, 70, or even a couple $100 for it, depending on the title and the rarity and all of that. And that's even more true with the Masterworks, but only over a grander spectrum of books. Um, so if you were lucky enough to actually get in on the ground floor of these back in the 80s and got every single one as soon as they came out, congratulations. You probably did pretty well for yourself and probably have a pretty nice collection. But if your significant other has not done this and wants to get this will be a way that nice pricey gift you could give to him or her for their birthday or Christmas, and they would be sure to appreciate it. Um, then in recent times, back in Marvel started this program in 2004, and DC followed in 2007, was the Omnibus program. DC before this had a Absolute DC, which is a similar kind of program. It's a larger, oversized hardcover collection of their classic books. Absolute Sandman, Absolute Planetary, Absolute DC New Frontier. Um, this kind of morphed into the Omnibus program. The Omnibus program for Marvel is basically, it's a kind of like the Masterworks program, only thicker. Um, like you might get a full series into it, 30 or 40 comic books in it. Um, Whereas the Masterworks, you get maybe 10 comic books in it. Uh, the omnibuses are thicker, bigger, heavier, but they're quite popular nowadays because people are able to get like all their comic books they want in one fell swoop. Instead of getting like the 23 copies or 36 copies of Amazing Spider-Man, I don't know what number it's up to now, you could get the omnibus one, which I think like is up to 6 or 7, and get the same amount of comic books, more or less. Make it easier to catch up with. Um, like I said, I don't know if there's any really like market for these in the back issue market for them. Um, haven't really, I'm not really done a deep dive into collecting unless I did the uh, archives or Masterworks. Um, but if you look around, you could find some deals on them. Usually these went from about like 125 to 150. If you want to get them directly out of the back, you could probably put them on your pull list for your comic book store and probably get like 10% off. Amazon still also sells them for a discount, and or you could get on eBay and get them for cheaper that way. Certain conventions like have half price deals on them and stuff. So you could try, if you want to try and get your set for your significant other. There's ways you could go about that. That's, you don't have to pay a retail price for it. But again, it all goes to like the what kind of collector you are associated with. Is your son or daughter a person who's just learning about the comic book industry, would love to read the first 50 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, but doesn't have the money to can't afford it, and just want to track down like the Marvel Tales or any other reprints they had about that. This is a good way. Get them the omnibuses or get them the um, Masterworks. They also have Marvel also has a smaller but still quite thick and chunky Epic collection, which they go through all their comic book titles and reprint the stories by story arc by story arc by story arc. And supposedly they have it mapped out so like, if they have a new one come out, it's the first one come out for the Avengers and it's number 23. That means it would be the 23rd in line of all this stuff. That might be another way to go through about doing this. Like I said, some of the archives do have value. Some trades do have value. That Man of Steel, when I got the mail order, that's worth a pretty good one in good condition. Unfortunately, mine is really well read, so it's not that good condition. But honestly, you could probably find on the secondary market like some valuable trade paperbacks, archives, and probably even omnibuses out there. Just be on the lookout and look for that. Um, uh, that's a basic information about that. If you need any more questions about trade paperbacks, you can find them in pretty much every bookstore everywhere. Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Half Price Books. You can find them in used bookstores and new bookstores and all over the place. It's not really hard to get in contact with, and you should go first and foremost to your local comic shop, keep them in business, keep them running, keep them going strong. But you can probably find out every single trade paperback that is in print on Amazon, if you so choose. So this is probably the easy, if your significant other is into this kind of stuff. This might be the easiest way to buy them gifts. You don't have to do a lot of legwork. You don't have to do much of anything. You can just go onto Amazon and just a couple clicks away, and you could get it. Or you could go to your Barnes and Noble or your local comic shop and have them, if it's still in stock and still in print, have them ordered and have it delivered to the store. So this might be a way to go if you've tried all the other ways I mentioned of like being involved in your significant other's hobby. This might be an easy way for you to get involved if you so choose. All right. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments, or if you have any corrections or any additional information you think might be pertinent, also leave that in the comments. like to have a discussion. I'm trying to do this as a service for people who might are kind of on the outside looking in with their friends or loved ones collecting, gives them a little up to speed. But this is in no way meant to be a comprehensive study of everything to do with the world of comic book collecting. And I'm sure I might be either on purpose or accidentally leaving out stuff. So if you feel you're been watching these and using it as a guide to help get closer to your wife or husband's collecting skills and tactics, and you need to know a little more information about this, put in the comments. And also, if you think there's something that should be printed, should have been included, also put that in the comments too. I'll be back next week with another installment of this. But until then, keep on collecting.